What's up, Coachable family? Welcome back to the Coachable podcast. If you're new here, I am your host, Tori Gordon, and today is a very special day because I get to reunite with a sister and a dear friend who I haven't gotten to see in way too long. Lauren Zoeller is here, and she is the amazing relationship expert who is the host of the Aligned Love podcast. She's also the founder of the Aligned Love Experience. She's an incredible somatic experiencing practitioner. She helps people heal generational trauma, regulate their nervous system, find love that is actually aligned for those who are seeking it, when they can call in partnership that is truly there, not to fulfill a gap or to fulfill a need, but to support you in becoming the best version of yourself and to be an addition and a benefit to the wholeness that you already are. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with her. She has been a dear friend of mine for several years, and to see your growth, to see your success, I mean, it's a reflection of your own work. Mm. It's a reflection of your own embodiment. And I think as we, as women, continue to commit to walking the path of being and doing what we talk about, our external world reflects that back to us. And your ability to build an insane business, help thousands of people heal and call in true love and true authentic partnership and divine union. And you're a mouthpiece for that, for love and for healing. And you've got a book coming out next year. You've got an app that you're working on. I mean, you're doing so much, and I want to hear all about it because it's been way too long. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It has been far too long. Wild years. But I feel like we've been, even though it's been years, it doesn't feel like it's been, we just picked right back up where we left off.
It's like the distance is there, but it's like you're a friend that like we just pick up where we left off.
1000%.
And I appreciate deeply those types of friendships in my life because I'll be frankly honest. Some friends, like, I can't do the super needy friends.
I know.
You know, I need them to be able to walk on their own 2 feet. And I love and cherish when we get to like drop in and really connect. And like, I just want to hear like, how have you been? A lot's happened since the last time I saw you in Vegas, and we were hanging out by the pool.
Yep.
And a lot's changed for me. I was going through some weird situationship thing. So my love life has changed. Yeah. Your love life has changed. Give me a little bit of an update. Like what's been going on?
My gosh. Well, I think since the last time that you and I saw each other, so much has changed. I was living in Nashville at the time. I'd been there for 12 years, which is wild to think about because I feel like I just moved to Nashville. And then I got caught up in a whirlwind romance. And it's funny, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but met someone that really marked all the boxes, like on paper was everything that I had been manifesting. But I picked my whole life up, moved to Denver for a year and a half and realized, oh, wow, even though all of these boxes are checked, that deep soul connection wasn't there. And so after a year and a half of being in Denver, I moved back to Nashville. So I'm fresh back in Nashville, been there for 2 months. And I'm excited. This is kind of the first time that I really talked about the big transition, and especially with the work that I do, leading women back home to themselves so that they can find healthy partnership. There's been a deeper level of healing in that entire process too, because what I thought was my forever person is not. So I'm excited to kind of dive deep into it. But that's what's been going on lately.
I mean, what a relatable place to start. I mean, how many of us thought we knew we found the one only to realize, oh, wait, maybe this is not it. And that one, let's normalize that.
Yes.
Because a lot of people out there watching and listening have probably experienced that or will experience that on some level. I certainly have. And frankly, I thought everybody was going to be my forever. I'm like, if I was dating you, I'm like, you're it. You're it. But as I have grown, as I've matured, as I've evolved as a woman, the things I look for have changed.
For sure.
As I've expanded my own capacity to love, the depth of the emotional maturity of the work and the consciousness of my partner has changed and what I'm looking for. So I'm curious for you, like you just mentioned something about this soul connection that you felt was missing. Can you articulate what that means to you? Because a lot of people might have that list of things that they're looking for. So what are some of those things that you were looking for? And then what does this soul piece exactly look like? And feel
well,
like?
I think to put it in really simple terms for me, something that I realized in that partnership was that there's a massive difference between personal growth and healing.
Tell me more, girl. Yep.
And that was something, it's funny because I've been through a journey on my own over the past, and I know that you've been on the same path over the past 5 to 10 years, where I was immersed in, traditional talk therapy. I was spending multiple 6 figures going to mindset retreats and hiring mindset coaches and doing all of this work to better myself. But I wasn't really doing the deep work to understand my nervous system and to understand what was happening on a deeper level as far as how I related to myself and others. And that journey unfolded over the past 5 years. And so it's funny because I had this whole list of things that I wanted in a partner. Like he needed to be committed to personal growth.
Okay.
He needed to be, a certain height. He needed to do, he needed to have a certain career and be into his fitness, like all of these things that were very surface level that I thought had depth to them at the time, carried weight. Right. But once I got into that partnership, I recognized there's the personal development world right now. And we're just going to get raw and real. I think totes a lot on mindset and not really doing the deep work to truly understand yourself at a deep level and know and embody that you're always going to be healing. You're not broken, but you're always going to be uncovering deeper layers of yourself. And I felt like once I was in that partnership for a while, that value, and not everybody is destined to go on that path. I truly believe that, not everyone really is down to continue to peel back the layers.
It's a choice.
Right? It's a choice.
Fully.
And that's a choice that I have decided that is going to be my path for the rest of my life. Right. And so that, I think our values weren't aligned. And I recognize that everything can be what you want on paper. You can have he was successful. He was committed to personal growth. He was a great guy. He had all these things that I wanted, but that deep commitment to growth, that core value was misaligned. Right. And so it was a big uncovering for me that personal growth is much different than committing to the healing work, which is always getting curious about what's happening inside of your body.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start there with the difference between mindset work and that's a component, but not the whole picture. It's an aspect of healing because we can't heal something we're unaware of.
Right.
And that starts with our mind and then the perception that we have or the story we tell about our situation, our circumstance, et cetera, shifting from a victim mentality to a growth mindset, seeing things as happening for you, not to you. Like we can really get caught up in the mental. And I know you went through this and I went through this. I think everyone who is committed to this path will at some point. It's like we can talk ourselves in circles about and analyze the shit out of ourselves and our partners and everyone else in our lives. But there's something, the journey from the head into the heart and into the body is where is the journey that many people never take. Right. It's the hardest journey to take because that's where you have to really become the master of something we've never been taught, which is our nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what is the language of the body? So can you talk to me? I know you've been through extensive training in somatic experiencing and nervous system regulation work. I imagine polyvagal theory is a big part of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Same. So let's start there in terms of if somebody is watching this at home and they are in a partnership or they're single and they're trying to call in aligned love and they are very much listening to the shows and the podcasts and doing the books and going to the seminars and they're up here, what that next level of nervous system work, how did you notice that was a need personally for you in your own life?
Yeah.
And then where does one begin that journey?
Great question. So I love, and before we even kind of dive into this question too, I think it's important to remember that I just want to reiterate that mindset work is important.
Yeah.
We do need it. And I always say if you think about healing as a puzzle, 20% is the mindset work. The other 80, which most people haven't learned to speak, which is the language of the nervous system, it's the other 80%, but we're not taught that language. So I would say as far as where I was and how I got to this work, I started to notice that in the dating world, I continued to date the same type of person over and over again. My go-to was alcoholics. I used to have a joke with my mom that if there was one within a 10-mile radius, he'd find his way to me. It was like I would find them. And I had no history of alcoholism in my family. I don't have a problem with alcohol. And I couldn't understand why. I was like, why is this happening? And I'll never forget it. I tell this story often when I speak on stages, but I was dating this man. We've been dating for a while. And I was doing everything that we as successful women in the personal development world are taught to do, right? I had a team of therapists. I had a team of coaches. I was reading all the personal development books. I was reciting my affirmations every morning. I was like doing all the things, right? And
you're a good student.
I was a good student.
Yeah.
I was doing it all. And one morning, it was a Wednesday morning, I was standing in front of my mirror reciting my affirmations. And I looked down at my phone and had several missed calls from my boyfriend at the time, from his mom. Picked up the phone. She told me he had checked himself into rehab for the 6th time that year. And in that moment, I was like, what is going on? I'm doing all of this stuff and it's not working. Like nothing's working. I am talking about my feelings and my problems and my patterns and I've been doing all this inner child work. Something's not connecting. And it was in that moment, I was talking with a girlfriend. She said, I've been seeing a somatic therapist. And she's like, I know that you're like burned out with spending money and time on trying to figure this out for yourself.
Like another thing.
But maybe you should just give them a try.
Okay.
And so I went for my first SE session. And I remember leaving that session feeling like I can feel my body for the first time my whole entire life. And I was like, I'm just going to commit to this and see what happens. And long story short, 4 months later, I ended up finding my first healthy partnership at 32 years old. And I realized that there was so much healing that I hadn't done on the level of my body, on the level of my nervous system. And so that's when everything started to shift for me. I didn't just shift my relationship to men. I shifted my relationship to money, my relationship to my health. Like I had a cancer scare, eradicated that. I was spending money as quickly as I was making it, healed that relationship. So the first thing I'll say is that I often speak to women who come to me and they say, I don't understand why I keep attracting men who ghost me. I don't understand why I keep attracting men who refuse to commit. You've got to start to recognize there is some sort of pattern of dysregulation in your system that is calling these types of people into your life. It's not about the apps. It's not about the matchmakers. It's nothing all the good guys are not taken. I promise you, they're not all taken. It's just that you are operating out of a pattern of dysregulation. You're operating in a frequency of fear when you're in dysregulation. And that's why you're attracting and what you're attracting in. So that's where you have to start to get curious about what's showing up in your world. And the first step is to start to really learn to speak the language of your nervous system. And I'm happy to walk.
I would like us to break down the different states
for sure.
And help people to start to map a little bit of their own experience, or become aware, because like I said, you can't change something you're unaware of. And to understand, when am I in a regulated state, and what does dysregulation look like or feel like? And what are those different levels? And then we can get into the nitty gritty of like understanding co-regulation and how, or mirroring and all these other things. Yeah. So let's start with just unpacking our central nervous system and how the nervous system works. If you can give us a little bit of an overview of that.
For sure. So when we're thinking about the central nervous system, I like to call it's also called the autonomic nervous system. The way that I like to remember it is the automatic nervous system, because that's exactly what it does. It helps you get the heck out of Dodge when threat is present. And it also helps you stay safe and rest and digest when there is no threat present. So if we think about the autonomic nervous system in those two states, if you think about a bear coming into the room right now, your nervous system is going to automatically go into a survival state to keep you safe. It's either going to run away, which is flight. It's going to try to fight the bear, which is fight. It's going to freeze and play dead in hopes that you don't get mauled to death, which is the freeze response. Or it could potentially try to become best friends with the bear in hopes that the bear won't, maul it to death, which is the fawn response. So all of these four responses are fantastic when there's actual threat present in your life, right?
Yes.
So if you were a child who was having big emotions and nobody was there to support you in those emotions, chances are you went into one of those four survival responses to receive love, to stay safe. Now, the problem is that when we talk about trauma, the definition of trauma is the stuck nervous system response, or the stuck psychosomatic response to something that was too fast, too much, too soon for your body to regulate. Okay. So when these survival responses get stuck, which means they don't have time to complete and get to safety, this is where we start to see relational ruptures happen down the line, where we can't connect from safety. So safety feels like, in the body, it feels like home. It feels like you and me talking right now, our heart rates aren't lifted. We can feel our butts in the seats, right? We can be present with one another. We can make eye contact. That's how you know you're safe. But if you're sitting here trying to relate to someone and you're sweating and you feel like you want to get the heck out of Dodge, out of the room, or you're a deer in headlights, or you feel like everything the other person says you want to fight them about, these are all signs that your nervous system is operating out of dysregulation.
Yes.
There's a relational rupture.
Yes.
And that's the best way to know.
Yes. So I think this is so important, because everybody can think of a time when they've had a stressful experience, a conflict, a hard conversation. They've gotten a phone call that was with some bad news. Somebody's ghosted me, like every scenario in the book, that then is the trigger to sending you into what was like, I'm having a great day, to now, oh my gosh, the part of my brainstem that is neuroception, that is like a threat detector, like what you were saying, that is like looking for safety, threat or life-threatening danger at all times, is like threat. Or depending on what the situation is, it might be life-threatening danger.
Right.
And how often many people aren't ever in a safe, regulated state. Like we are chronically stressed to the extent, and we're still trying to connect and wondering why it's not working.
Yep.
Or we are living in patterns where we're noticing we're constantly running. We're quote unquote avoidant. We're constantly fighting and defensive, or whatever our pattern of behavior might be. We can see it through the lens and the perception of the mind and understanding that, but also through the body, through the state of our nervous system as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's when you start to learn that language, I always say that you can be in control of your triggers versus your triggers being in control of you. Because there's something to be said for someone ghosting you. It hurts. It stinks. It's sad. Sometimes you may feel angry. But when those triggers start to take over and you start to relive the fact that you were abandoned as a child and it continues to play on repeat, this is where it becomes an issue because your baseline is now operating in survival, which that's ultimately what we want to fix in order for you to be in really healthy relationship with yourself and someone else.
Yeah, I think back to previous relationships of mine. And before I had this awareness and had learned the language of my body and my nervous system, I was kind of handicapped. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like I can only do so much. And I was trying to connect by thinking about how to connect versus being in a place in my heart and in my body where that's actually available to me. And what I had noticed now in hindsight, looking back, is that I had chosen partners who also didn't know what safety felt like in their bodies. And so what I noticed is this idea when I started to learn about co-regulation, meaning like we as human beings can self-regulate. We can learn techniques to soothe ourselves when we're in a dysregulated state, like breath work or connecting to our senses, getting different temperatures and holding different like ice or something if that helps you to come back into your body. But then having someone else who is in a regulated safe space should be able to help me regulate. I actually had this happen this morning. So my roommate and Angel and amazing friend, Nikki, who's been on the show multiple times, I was moving through a lot this morning, a lot. And there was a moment where I felt pretty dysregulated. And I have learned, one, how to find safe people. So I went in her room and I knew what I needed because I've learned how to ask for it. I just said, can you get up right now and hug me and hold me and send me a lot of love? I just need to receive that right now. And she did. She put her hand on my heart and she held me as long as I needed until that frozen part of me softened and melted. And then the part of me that was scared in dysregulation. So I had gone into sort of like a freeze response, and she held me and I could feel, and I connected to my body and I let that kind of relax and melt. And then there were tears. And so then I moved through that. And then there was relief. And now because I was working with her who's regulated and safe, she was able to help me regulate. Beautiful. And so it was beautiful. Like, oh boy. Like when you have that in a partner, fighting, conflict is a completely different story in the way it's addressed and the way you repair versus if not.
1000%.
I was like, this is the money. Like this is the game is who can learn this.
Exactly. Well, and I think what you also demonstrated, so that is co-regulation at its core, right? And you think about, in order for that to happen too, though, Nikki needed to also know the language of the nervous system to be able to hold that space for you. And so really this dance that we're talking about is being able to understand what is self-regulation, because if Nikki wasn't there, you also know that you could have moved through it. You would have found other tools to self-regulate, but to be able to have something so beautiful to go to, you were able to co-regulate with her too, but she has to know that language. So I think that's that's what we're looking for in essence.
Yeah. I didn't know. I wish someone would have told me. That the love I was really looking for was not all this fancy, smancy bullshit. It's safety. It's safety within myself, like just how to source that from within, and also how to attract and call in other people who can do that for themselves in our safe place. And doesn't mean I don't get stressed and other people in my life don't get stressed, but like we know the language and we know the tools. And so what advice do you have to people who maybe they're in partnership right now and they're like, me and my partner don't know how to do this. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're like, we're feeling a lot of friction, or we're getting to a lot of standstills or silent treatment. You know what I mean? How do we start to bridge that gap relationally? Because this is something that really keeps people from having the love that they desire and they deserve.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first step is going to be to start to teach yourself this language. And you have to remember the nervous system doesn't speak in story.
Okay.
It doesn't speak in meaning, right? Different practitioners would argue that because meaning is definitely one of the channels that we have revelation from, but it's usually the channel that's really hyper developed for people. So I always like to say, remember, the nervous system doesn't speak in story. The nervous system speaks primarily in sensation and emotion. So a fantastic exercise that I love to give, and I give this for all of my clients when they start with me, is to begin learning this language. Set a timer on your phone for morning, noon, and night. And when it goes off, get out your notes app on your phone. All I want you to start to document for a week straight: what sensations are present in your body? What emotions are present? And then what are you doing? So notice no story, right? All I want you to start to document.
It's like fact.
Yeah, facts. Yeah. Sensations, emotions. So for instance, if the timer went off right now and I checked in with my sensations and emotions, I feel grounded in my low belly. I feel joy. I'm recording a podcast with Tori. Okay. So start to do this. And what happens is then I want you to go back and I want you to look at what you documented a week later and notice if every time that timer went off, let's say you were writing an email, or let's say you were connecting with your significant other and you noticed your heart rate was elevated, or you felt like you wanted to fight someone, or you felt like you couldn't tap into any sensation or any emotion. These are all signs that your body is operating in a baseline of survival. And you're starting to learn the language between what does safety feel like and what does dysregulation or survival feel like. That has to be the first step.
Yeah, you need to have the felt sense of like, when I'm in this state, this is what this is. This is what it feels like.
Right. And then from there, you can start to say, wow, every time I'm with you, I feel this way, or I notice this sensation in my body. And then you get to start to get curious about that. I mean, hands down, I know that I am a somatic experiencing practitioner, but the best way to start to renegotiate survival in the system is to work with a practitioner, to work with someone who can guide you through these patterns of dysregulation to safety, because oftentimes we
don't know how to take ourselves
we can't do
there.
it. We can't get ourselves there. Right.
Well, and in a personal development mindset driven culture. That tells us just think positively. We're doomed. Because to your point, the nervous system doesn't speak in story. You can't think your way out of a dysregulated state.
You can't.
So there's that talking about it or thinking and analyzing it isn't going to help you reach safety.
Right.
And that's oftentimes a lot of people, it's like, okay, I just need to either just endure it until it's over. Or let me talk my way out of it.
Which in essence, 9 times out of 10 will re-traumatize the system. And that's what a lot of people don't understand.
I'm trying to talk my partner out of a dysregulated
exactly.
state. Can we talk about that?
Right. Which is re-traumatizing them in a lot of ways. And so when you start to learn this language, you both start to speak in the space of, there's so much power in being able to say, hey, I need to take a beat and I need to go be with this. I need to process it. And to be able to come back and say, hey, like you did with Nikki, can you just hold me right now? That's coming from a place of knowing your nervous system versus showing up and saying, oh my gosh, Nikki, all this stuff came up, and talking to her about,
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do. And then all you're doing is you're just going down the trauma vortex and re-traumatizing your nervous system. Your nervous system is still feeling this sense of dysregulation over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, this is such a missing puzzle piece in therapeutic work. I mean, especially in traditional cognitive behavioral talk therapy, where people are just talking themselves in circles and have all of this awareness. Like you said, the body and the nervous system, you can be doing all of the things and thinking all, doing the affirmations, doing the quote unquote work, what you think you're doing, and not seeing the progress that you, and get so frustrated by it and just want to throw your hands up and be like, something, and that can, the thought that comes to me is how much that is reinforcing the story that I'm just broken.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Or
something's just wrong with me if I'm doing all the things and it's still not working.
Exactly. Because I mean, that's where I was. And I would say the majority of the women that make their way to me, and men, because I work with men too, they're at their wit's end. They're like, I have been in therapy for 10 years. Therapy doesn't work. I'm like, therapy works if you get to the level of the body. But most of us, this is a new concept. This is not, it's just now making its way into the field of being in the space of therapy. Most people haven't talked about it. And so when you recognize that there is a deeper level, that's a whole body approach, not just a mind-driven approach, you can start to heal. And not to like completely divert, but this whole, something that drives me crazy is the whole, I'm anxiously attached. I am avoidant. There's these labels that are being placed on everything
that we put ourselves in.
And I want people to know you can actually work to security.
100%.
You can have a secure relationship.
I have experienced that myself. Yeah. I am gratefully like sitting in a place today where I've experienced that shift where I used to be, and it depended on my partner and how they were also attached. But like I would, in my last partnership was pretty anxious. And my partner was pretty avoidant, but I've come so far because the time apart, I really spent working on this aspect of self-sourcing safety and knowing my body really, really intimately, so that now when I approach relationship or I approach intimacy with anybody, including my friends and my family, it's from such a more grounded, embodied place versus this energy of like flailing
all the time.
And like really seeking you to make me okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like sourcing my okayness from if we're okay, then I'm okay.
Then I'm okay. Yeah. Which is it's a big shift for someone to make, but this is the way through that. Like and I hope if anybody's listening to this, that's the thread of hope that you can
100%.
lead with, right?
Well, like, that's your soul. Your soul, your spirit is the part of you that holds on to hope, and it's your guide too. And that is, and it's important for people to hear, like, there is a path forward. So I want you to, first of all, do you have resources, books you recommend on understanding the body? I know like Peter Levine's work, like I'm curious what your like top couple of things are if people want to learn more about this. And two, if someone comes to work with you for somatic experiencing, like what do you do with people?
That's always, everybody always asks that question. And I love it. I love that you're asking it because I want to answer it. I would say if you're really interested in this work, Dr. Peter Levine is a fantastic place to start. Waking the Tiger, his book, Waking the Tiger, also his book In an Unspoken Voice. I would start there. Waking the Tiger can get it's pretty in-depth and gets pretty clinical. So I would start with those two books, and also, follow him, check out his stuff. You can also follow me on Instagram. I talk about it a lot. But as far as somatic experiencing is concerned, I tell people it's really hard to articulate exactly how it works. I am trained to be able to track your nervous system, which means we talked about it earlier. When someone goes into a flight response, their body will start to respond even before you feel the anxiety, right? So I often notice someone's eyes might dart towards the door, or their shoulders may lift a little bit, Or I had a client yesterday who, she didn't know she was doing it, but her head kept twitching a little bit to the left. I knew it was an incomplete protection response. So I am trained as a practitioner to notice these survival responses inside of your system. And what happens is that when your body goes into a survival response, you're going into what we call the trauma vortex. Okay. It's this vortex that just continues to spin. As a practitioner, what my job is to bring in what we call a counter vortex, which is safety. And what happens in an SE session is we are going to carefully go back and forth between the trauma vortex and the counter vortex. We're going to do these little figure 8 type movements, going up into trauma, down into counter vortex. And what happens over time is that your nervous system the counter vortex starts to take over the trauma vortex and removes that trigger from your system because your baseline shifts into, oh, wow, I can actually complete this incomplete protection response that didn't have time to complete at the time the trauma was experienced. And in essence, that's what trauma is. It's these stuck responses that don't have time to complete. So as a practitioner, I'm giving you the space to complete them so we can remove them from your system. Right?
Would you say that's the same thing as alchemizing energy?
For sure.
Okay.
1,000%.
Another way to say it, but it depends on what kind of school of thought you come from.
1,000%. And here's what I think is so cool about it, though. Peter gave scientific proof to it. And
it's not, he's grounding it in the science.
He's grounding it in the science.
For sure.
And I'm a science geek. So when I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've known this, but to see it scientifically just clicked it all into place for me. And a lot of his work is based in, he watched and observed animals in the Sahara Desert and watched just how naturally this part of us that is wired for protection, how it naturally happens in the body. And so a lot of SE principles and the way that we work with the body is, how does the body function at its core, right? Without you even having to think about it. And so it's exactly.
Well, the body is so intelligent.
It's so intelligent.
So wise.
But we work against it all the time.
Well, you were saying like Peter observing all of these animals in the wild. And I think about like a gazelle that's about to, get eaten or something. And then it gets up and it shakes. Or I watch my dog after he's gone, he gives me a stressed out yawn. You know what I mean? He's like giving me a stress yawn. And I'm like, this is a signal. He's moving energy because he needs to go out. Like he's trying to give me a message. He's trying to tell me something. And his body, and he can't talk to me.
Right.
So he's showing me in these other ways. Or he comes out and he shakes his body to like neutralize the energy. And that's kind of the visual I got as you were saying, you help kind of to complete the process that was frozen in time, essentially, is like that process allows you to complete the circle. Like I remember in a psilocybin journey, it was my first one years ago, and I worked with a therapist and a shaman, and I had a memory come up, and it was a memory that it had stored. I had stored trauma in the body around this memory, and I had involved my mom, and what my body had internalized is neglect, but it was to no fault of her own. Like she was working and she wasn't there, but I really needed her. And there, in my body, my nervous system had held on to this, and it had gotten really stuck in this loop, essentially, of calling out, I need help. No one's coming. Where are you when I need you? And this played out in my relationships.
Yeah.
Deeply.
Yeah.
Of thinking that my loved one wasn't going to be there when I needed them.
Yeah.
Had no idea these things were correlated, right? And so I'm working through this memory, and I'm feeling the grief and the longing for love and for comfort and for safety. And I'm like 3 years old, crying, and I'm reliving it. I'm like, Mom, where are you? Like, I need you. Don't you know I need you? And all of this is internal. I'm processing this internally. I'm not talking about it. And all of a sudden, my therapist puts her hand on my heart, and it closes the loop.
Yeah.
it's like, I'm right here. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm right here with you. And it released from my body just like that. And it was the craziest thing.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and that is a great example of what SE does. Psychedelics, it's somatic experiencing. It's just you're removing the veil. So I love that you talked about having someone there because that is a very important part of journeying. You have to, because when you're lifting the veil, you're bringing all of that survival energy up to the surface. And to have someone, I mean, there'll be times when I'll be in sessions and very similar instances will happen with my clients, and I'll bring in an empathetic witness with them just to be seen. And that closes the loop. And so when you are able to understand that in that moment, she gave you the opportunity to
finish it.
Complete that incomplete response that you felt when you were 3.
Yes.
And that is what we do in SE.
It was, I still
So
go
beautiful.
back and think about it all the time because it really was profound for me. You just mentioned something called the empathetic witness. Can you define that? And then how can we as human beings, whether we're in partnership or not, or whether we're doing this with our significant other, a friend, a loved one, whoever, how can we start to be or practice being an empathetic witness for those that we love?
Yeah. So oftentimes when we experience something that is too fast, too much, too soon, we don't have anyone there to, you hear this word often, hold space, which I think is sometimes thrown around. We don't have anyone there that can actually witness us in the pain, the distress that we're in, to let us know that we're not alone in that moment. And you see it. I was working with a client a couple of weeks ago who was in a major car accident when she was in her 20s. Lot of survival response energy that hasn't been completed. And part of it was that when she was in the car wreck, she laid there for a long time before anyone came to help her. And there was a lot of abandonment in her system simply because there was no one there to respond to her. And so a lot of the work that we've done together is reliving that accident and having the paramedic that eventually did show up right away and witness her, not fix anything that was going on, just hold space to remind her that she wasn't alone. And so having an empathetic witness in anything, not someone that's fixing, right? Not someone that's trying to make the situation better, someone that's just there to witness you in what you're feeling, sadness, anger, loneliness, grief, can complete a lot of, because trauma is the absence of an empathetic witness in a lot of ways.
The thought I just had, which I don't know, it feels like a new thought for me, is I wonder if what you just said around this feeling of being alone is why so many people are afraid to be alone.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? It's like, no, God, don't take me back to the moment where I'm suffering alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you have to remember this
why
too.
We cling into codependent relationships so often because we white knuckle people because we're like, don't leave me, God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you have to, and here's the differentiation between that too. And I want to make this really clear.
Okay.
An empathetic witness witnesses you in your wholeness and reminds you that you're whole, right? Because if you think about when I bring in an empathetic witness with a client, again, they're not fixing. They're just there to witness that person, to remind them like, yeah, what you're going through is really scary. What you're going through is really sad. I can hug you, but I'm reminding you that you're not alone, that you are your own source of being whole. And so what happens is that when that gets interrupted and we feel like, oh my gosh, we're abandoned, we don't have anybody to remind us that we're whole, that's when the relational rupture happens. And then we start to feel like someone else is responsible for us being whole because they weren't there to just sit and witness us.
Yeah.
Right.
Or we're like, save me.
Yeah.
How many of us are going into a relationship or dating right now and they're like, please save me.
Yeah.
Anybody, you know what I mean? Or we'll take anything that presents as attention or validation, and we call it love, and we're like, oh, thank God.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Right. When in a real, true, aligned, conscious partnership, that other person is just there. They're there to witness what you're going through and to hold that space for you, but they're not responsible for fixing anything. They can't. They can't fix that for you. And that journey of being able to come home to yourself and being witnessed by someone who can hold space for you in that it's massively healing. Most people have never had that before. I hadn't, right?
Yeah. What are you looking for now? Now that you're back on it, like when you're in the dating world, like what are the red flags you're looking for?
Yeah.
What are the things you're picking up on that are working, that are not working? Like, give me the lowdown.
Yeah. I mean, I would say my biggest thing now that I'm out back in the world is really, and I'll tell you, I've been going on dates with amazing men who are immersed in this work. Who have done a level of healing that's deeper than just, there is a very flashy part of the personal development world that speaks about growth and they're not embodied.
Yes.
And
how can you spot that?
Oh my gosh.
So that we don't trick ourselves and fool ourselves. And you know what I mean? Like, are there things that we can pick up on of unembodied man, an unembodied or woman? You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be just men, but
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me would be first how they're able to hold space. That's a really big sign. If someone can not go into fixing, if someone can actually witness you and what it is that you're going through and feel like they can hold space without fixing is a really big sign. And if somebody has to, I ask the questions like, what work have you done? Like tell me about the work that you've done. And if someone's like, oh, I went to therapy, well, what type of therapy? And I know this sounds like it's like drilling someone.
Yeah.
But I've been on dates since my last relationship with men who have done so much deep inner child work and so much deep nervous system work. That's what I'm looking for because I want someone that can speak that language in the same way that I can.
And there's no better way to find that out than to get into conflict with somebody.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the way that you know.
Or to get into a stressed out situation.
Exactly. Yeah. And to be triggered and watch what happens in that scenario. So it's not, it has to go. And I am a firm believer that what you attract is a mirror of what's going on internally.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I got out of my last relationship, I had to do some really deep soul searching. So I'm like, and he's a great guy. We just were on different paths. But I was like, there's something in me that needs to heal because I got really caught up in vanity. I got caught up in a lot of really discounting all this work that I had done. I quieted my voice. I had a dream at the end of the relationship that I was walking down the street and I was passing all of my friends, my family members, and nobody recognized me. They were like walking by me like I was a ghost and I was like waving and nobody recognized me. And when I got out of that relationship, that stuck with me. And I was like, how did I get to this space where I was shutting down my voice again and discounting myself? And I had to heal that. I really had to go deep into the nervous system and figure out where that was coming from. And now that I've kind of done some of that work and uncovered it, I'm now entering into dating situations, really owning my voice and using it and noticing how it's being reflected back. Right. So I would just say, I think that there's no way of knowing really. I mean, stay out of certain circles, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not big on a lot of the personal development summits that are happening now that, there's a lot of men toting that they're, and women toting that they're healed and
Yeah. Anybody who says, I'm totally healed is a red flag.
Get out. Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
okay.
Or like I've done all this mindset work and worked with, I want to know what you're doing at the level of the body. Talk to me about it. Let's have an intellectual conversation about it. And that's what I'm
that. And like, I don't know. It's like, watch what they do, not what they say.
Yes. Actions.
That's I work a lot with people just like you do. And I also help people integrate a lot of psychedelic experiences. And we say integration is the most important aspect.
Yeah.
Which integration is where you take the awareness and you do something with it.
Yes.
And because you can be gifted, like you can work with a practitioner, you can have a psychedelic experience, you can go deep dive into inner child work or internal family systems or this, that, and that. Get all this awareness. But if you don't do anything with it, then you just sound cool. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Then you just say all the right things, but it's not resonating and it's energetically empty, or because it's like, it's not grounded in the body. And you can feel, I can feel the difference now. And, in myself. And that's how I have to check myself. And am I in integrity? Right. Like am I just saying this, or am I
embodying it? Yeah. Are you embodied in it?
And that's like what I look for most when I'm working with somebody. I will not work with somebody or sit with somebody who isn't embodying the work. Like that's the number one thing.
For sure. Well, and I think that going back, because this thought just came to me, I mean, knowing even when you're dating that you're with somebody who's committed to that, because it's you have to consistently recommit to that process. And I think that in my last relationship, that's what I realized. It's like I was leading people through this work, but there was a point where I quit integrating it. I quit embodying it. And I am now committed to, hey, are you committed to consistently getting curious and then embodying what comes up for you? Because there are some people that just aren't, and it's just not the person I want to do life with. There are some people that aren't committed to that journey. And,
well, to me, I've been there too, and so several years now back, there was a point where I noticed I was just regurgitating a lot of what I had heard, what I had read, but I didn't have the embodiment aspect of it. And I, and some of you who might be listening to this might be feeling a little, ooh, they're talking about me. You know what I mean? If that is, like, let this not be something to make you feel judged or shamed, but call you forward into deeper level of integrity with yourself, right? That, because here's the thing, confidence comes with embodiment. If you're feeling insecure, or like you got all this imposter syndrome, or you're trying to lead people, but you're not doing the practices, you're not doing the work, you're telling people they need to meditate, you could tell you haven't meditated in months. You know what I mean? That's when we have to stop and to say, am I more committed to looking good? Or am I committed to feeling and being good within myself? And that's a conversation you got to have with yourself that happens in the privacy of your own heart, Yeah.
I mean, that's the definition of integrity.
Yeah.
Right there. I think there's a lot of people out in the world right now, especially in the personal development world, who are toting integrity, like integrity, but they're not embodying what they're actually preaching. And that's just really, I love that you brought that full circle, because it's a beautiful thing when you can really land in the work that you're doing. And we fall off of it, right? We're human.
For sure.
It happens. But it's being able to check it and come back to it.
And that's how we create safe spaces for people. Yeah. If we want to actually help people get real results, we need to be able to hold the space for that. And we can only be those safe people if we are in integrity. You know what I mean? Because then you're working and operating in shadow. Yeah. At that point.
For sure. And I think a great way to recognize if you're there is to look around you and see what's in your reality right now. I know I had gotten to that place, you know, in my past relationship where everything started to feel really hard. Work started to feel hard. Like my workout started to feel hard. Like everything started to feel hard. I'm like, what is happening? And I realized, I was in that place where I wasn't embodying it anymore. And so hopefully if you are listening and you're in that shame spiral that you were just talking about, even us, like the people that practice this all the time, we fall out. I mean, it's a constant check. Hey, we've got to be back in integrity.
And that's why I have the people in my life that I have to check me.
To check you, right? And that's what my friends
to tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, you doing what you're talking about? You know what I mean? I haven't noticed, you know what I mean? And I keep those people around me for sure.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's a great.
It's a big one.
A big one.
Yeah, man. I want people to have the love that's, you know, before this show. My prayer, my intention for it is that people have access to the awareness first that they are love. And if you don't know what love is, you know, you're like, I'm questioning what even love is at this point. And how do I go be love or let love in? And what's the loving thing to do? My invitation is like, if you're still trying to reconcile with that, is like, do no harm. Like if you're still like trying to figure out what love is, like at least do no harm. Like that's like a good place to start. Cause I want people to have, true love in their life, whether that's romantic or not. You know what I mean? I want people to know what it feels like to be deeply loved and to love deeply. And in my experience, I've only been able to receive at the level and depth that I am now because I have remembered that I'm worthy of it and that I deserve it and that like I don't have to fight it. I don't have to fight it. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to hustle for it. I don't have to perform for it. I don't have to do a whole song and dance. And now in my body, I know when I'm doing that, when I'm performing versus when I'm just being myself and being loved for who that is. And that's like a feeling that is like nothing else.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and that's why we do this work, right? That is, you're able to get there because you were committed to knowing the language of your nervous system and you know what that home, because safety, that feeling of home, that is unconditional love. That is worthiness. It's all the same. And you were committed to it, to finding it. And now you're here.
I'm curious for you and you're like, ooh, it's 333. Love that. Have you found in your new season that anything has like, that you've entered into a deeper level of like falling in love with yourself again? What is that like?
I'll tell you, it has been more grief than I thought it would be. Because I recognized that there was, and I believe that in order to gain deeper levels of true unconditional love, we have to grieve, because for me, I've been doing a lot of grief around generations that came before me. A lot of grief that's so, so, so deep that it was obviously creeping up into the way that I was showing up in my partnerships. But I didn't recognize how deep of a well that grief was. And when I allowed myself, I remember because when I moved back to Nashville, of course, like the universe has it, I had rented out my places. I had people living in my places for They just signed leases. And I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm back in Nashville. Where am I going to live? So I ended up getting this really beautiful high-rise condo in downtown Nashville, stunning view, floor to ceiling windows. I mean, it's just beautiful. And the first week I had nothing, right? Because I had literally just moved across the country, left stuff in my house fully furnished. I had nothing. I was in this beautiful condo by myself. And I just remember being on my knees, I was just overcome with deep grief. And it wasn't so much about the ending of the relationship. It was much deeper because I had disconnected my voice in that relationship. And I realized how deep that ran, right? Like to my great, great, great grandmother who came over here and was just told like, hey, we just need to be accepted and like shut down your voice, just survive. So I was grieving all of this, but for the first time, because I've grieved in the past, but for the first time, I was able to grieve in a way that I felt just unapologetic about it. And what came through on the other side was that there's so much collectively, there's so much grief that we're not able to experience, that we're not experiencing right now because we feel like we have to, that we can't, like it's not okay to grieve. And so I feel like we were talking about the collective before we came in here. I feel like I've connected to myself unconditionally, but this new level that I've been entering into has really been deepening unconditional love for what we're all missing right now. And I feel like that's what I'm tapping into.
Me too.
As a result.
I feel that.
Of what's happening.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that. Thank you for sharing that. Because grief is when most of us like will run from like the fucking plague. And, you know, grief is in many ways love's souvenir. And so the depth of our grief that we're willing to feel shows us the heights of our love that we're also able to experience. But there is deep power and healing and presencing the fact that sometimes grief feels like this love that doesn't have anywhere to go.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what I've been feeling a lot of in this chapter. And it's opened up my eyes so much to what it means, just like really what it means to love another from that space of being unconditional and witnessing them and their grief, which has been, you know, I've been in partnership where I've somewhat touched into that, but to honor and trust the masculine from that space of deep grief has been a really big,
it's crazy.
Like
it's
unveiling.
Crazy. I have two people in my life, Nikki being one of them, and my friend Alex, who's holds the masculine space for me in ways that have been insanely healing. And I wrote them both a message this morning when I was moving through my stuff. And I'd like, because you were saying how to love another from that place, I'd like to read the response because I think it's powerful and to show that this is actually a reality. Like you really can get there. This has not been something I've had before. Like these relationships that I've cultivated now are the byproduct of the work that I've done. Yeah. But like I sent them both the message, you know, and I had for context, I had just, both of them knew I was moving through some big emotions. I was feeling a lot of the collective pain and darkness that is out there right now. And I know what it feels like when I'm moving something that's not mine.
Yeah. Same.
You know, I know what that feels like. And both of them are these really safe, grounded spaces for me. And I was like, I'm just ridiculously grateful for you two, for the insanely bright lights that you are for me. You're my angels, and I feel so safe and protected with you. And I truly don't know what I'd do without you in my life. I don't want to imagine a world without you in it, so you're stuck with me. But you both help me in ways you may never fully understand, because I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully express. The depth that your love impacts me on a daily basis is layered and multidimensional, and I'm truthfully, eternally humbled to the Most High and grateful. I love you. And Nikki's response, I'll just share hers because it's really beautiful. She said, I love you. I'll never forget telling you in one of your darkest moments, and she's referring to January of this year, that there's no depth of your pain that will ever be too much for me. That will ever be too much to make me walk away. to the depth of pain we've journeyed together is the height of love and joy we will also experience. I'm like, that's what it means.
That's what it means. That is unconditional love.
Yeah.
And everything to pull it full circle, everything that we've been speaking about and doing this work, for someone to witness you in that space and hold space for you. Mm-hmm. She's not trying to fix you. She's not trying to take away your pain. No. She's not trying to, discount anything that you're going through. She's just saying, this is what it means to be unconditionally loved. Mm-hmm. And as you said that too, that's something during this whole transition too. I have very similar people, only a few of them, right? That stepped up in that way too. And it reminded me that we often, when we're in the search for a romantic partner to complete us, we forget sometimes that love is already here within us, but also in the people that surround us. And that's what doing this work does, is it reminds you
it's
that
everywhere.
It's here. It's everywhere.
And how can I cultivate it with the people that are here already?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, I would tune into, okay, what is this deep desire that I have? What's I want to be in a relationship. Why? It's going to make me feel blah, 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 right?
Yep.
Connected. It's going to make me feel loved. Okay, well, how can I connect into that now? Where does that exist now? And how can I pour gasoline on that fire?
Yeah.
And when I am so lit up and expressed in that, I am like, people are like, ooh, yeah. I want some of that.
Yep.
Like, how, you know what I mean? Because it's not coming from a place of not having.
Right.
It's not coming from a place of lack. And I need you to come make me better. I have already. It's within me and it's around me. Even in my relationship, my dog. Yeah. My fucking dog is like, when I've been lonely, I'm like, oh, we got each other. You know? And reminds me of unconditional love. And I can tap into the energy and the frequency. Love is a frequency you tap into. Yeah. It's not something you give or get. It's a frequency that you align with.
Right.
And you emanate outward, and you receive that frequency back. And when you can tap into that, I promise you'll start to attract something that's called love.
Yes.
Real love.
For sure.
What we have been, convinced is love.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a deep path.
It is.
It's a deep, deep, deep path. And it's not, I think it's meant for everyone. But I always say to all the women that make their way to me, and men, like, you're the chosen one.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're the chosen one. You've said yes. You've said yes to being so courageous, to showing up for this journey. And it's so beautiful and so hard and so but what's on the other side of it is so amazing if you can commit to it. And that's what we all want.
Good. So good. It just gets better. Thank you. Thank you for being the chosen courageous one that is willing to continue to explore the parts of yourself that need love, that need a seat and a voice at the table.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing us that the work continues. It doesn't end.
It never stop.
And for giving us all permission to be human. I love you very much, and I'm grateful for you, and I'm excited to see everything that you do, because your impact is great. And I want to hear, and I want you to tell people kind of what's on the table for what's next in your world, and how people can get involved in your programs, and what you have coming down the pipeline for everybody who wants to get connected with you.
Okay. Well, first, thank you for having me on and sharing your heart. I love you unconditionally. It takes someone to know this path, to connect with people who are also on that same path. So thank you. But as far as what I have coming up, I have an app that's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's called Aligned, and it's a space where you can come be in community with other women and men who are on this path to coming home to themselves and really knowing what it means to be in the space of unconditional love. So it's going to be great. So you can follow all along on my Instagram at Lauren Zoeller. I'm going to be talking all about it. I do have a book that's coming out next year. I don't think I've released the name of the book, so I'll say it here on the podcast for the first time.
Okay.
It is called The Missing Language of Love.
Ooh, love it.
And it's all about how to reconnect. It's all about love beyond the butterflies. So how do we connect to the language of our nervous system to find unconditional love? So
Will you come back when the book is okay?
When
Great.
the
When
book's
out, we'll have you back. To talk all about that.
So
I'm super excited.
those are the big things. So just follow along on Instagram. You can go to my website, laurenzoeller.com, and everything's there.
We will make all of that super bold and pretty in the show notes so you guys can go connect with Lauren and stay connected to her journey and everything she's doing. I highly recommend, if this conversation has spoken to you, has touched you in some way, if you feel called forward into a new level of integrity, of healing, of depth, of connection to self, or a new, deeper understanding of what intimacy can look like, I encourage you to connect with Lauren. She is one of the best in the game. So we're grateful to have you and for your wisdom and your medicine. And if you want, please go to the show notes, connect with Lauren, and leave us a rating and a review if this spoke to you. That is the number one way you can say thank you outside of sharing it with a friend, tagging us, posting it on social media. We are the Coachable Podcast on Instagram and on TikTok. And leaving us a rating and review really helps the show get out to more people. So that is all for this week. I love you. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week on the Coachable Podcast.